One by one, the stars overhead began to disappear, swallowed by some enormous darkness interposing itself from above and behind the shuttle. Sharply pointed at its most forward position, broadening behind, the flood of blackness advanced, blotting out more and more of the unblinking starfield, until darkness was all there was to see. Then, all across the length and breadth of the ominous shape, lights came on. Blue and white running lights, tiny red hatch and security lights. Sudden glows from within transparent steel viewports, one large rectangular whiteness limned by atmosphere shields. The light showed the vast triangle to be the underside of an Imperial Star Destroyer, painted black. Forbidding a moment ago, now comparatively cheerful in its proper running configuration. It was the Galad Pelion, newly arrived from the Imperial Remnant, and its officers clearly knew how to put on a show. Jana Solo, sitting with the others in the dimly lit passenger compartment of the government VIP shuttle, watched the entire display through the overhead transparent steel canopy and laughed out loud. The Bothan in the sumptuously padded chair next to hers gave her a curious look. His mottled red and tan fur twitched, either from suppressed irritation or embarrassment at Jana's outburst.
What do you find so amusing?
Oh, both the obviousness of it and the skill with which it was performed. It's so very, you used to think of us as dark and scary, but now we're just your stylish allies. Jana lowered her voice so that her next comment would not carry to the passengers in the seats behind. The press will love it. That image will play on the HoloNews broadcasts constantly. Mark my words.
Was that little show Jagged Fell detail?
Jana tilted her head, considering. I don't know. He could have come up with it, but he usually doesn't spend his time planning displays or events. When he does, though, they're usually pretty effective. The shuttle rose toward the Galad Pelion's main landing bay. In moments, it was through the square atmosphere barrier shield and drifting sideways to land on the deck nearby. The landing place was clearly marked. Hundreds of beings, most wearing gray Imperial uniforms or the distinctive white armor of the Imperial Stormtrooper, waited in the bay. And the one circular spot where none stood was just the right size for the Galactic Alliance shuttle. The passengers rose as the shuttle settled into place. The Bothan smoothed his tunic, a cheerful blue decorated with a golden sliver pattern suggesting claws.
Time to go to work. You won't let me get killed, will you?
Jana let her eyes widen. Is that what I was supposed to be doing here? She asked in droll tones. I should have brought my lightsaber. The Bothan offered a long-suffering sigh and turned toward the exit. They descended the shuttle's boarding ramp. With no duties required of her other than to keep alert and to be the Jedi face at this preliminary meeting, Jana was able to stand back and observe. She was struck with the unreality of it all. The niece and daughter of three of the most famous enemies of the Empire during the First Galactic Civil War of a few decades earlier, she was now witness to events that might bring the Galactic Empire, or Imperial Remnant, as it was called everywhere outside its own borders, into the Galactic Alliance on a lasting basis. And at the center of the plan was the man, flanked by Imperial officers, who now approached the Bothan. Slightly under average size, though towering well above Jana's diminutive height, he was dark-haired, with a trim beard and mustache that gave him a rakish look, and was handsome in a way that became more pronounced when he glowered. A scar on his forehead ran up to his hairline and seemed to continue as a lock of white hair from that point. He wore expensive but subdued black civilian garments, neck to toe, that would be inconspicuous anywhere on Coruscant, but stood out in sharp relief to the gray and white uniforms, white armor, and colorful Alliance clothes surrounding him. He had one moment to glance at Jana. The look probably appeared neutral to onlookers, but for her, it carried just a twinkle of humor, a touch of exasperation that the two of them had to put up with all these delays. Then an Alliance functionary, notable for his blandness, made introductions.
Imperial Head of State, the Most Honorable Jagged Fell, may I present Senator Tierg Draley of Bothui, head of the Senate Unification Preparations Committee.
Jagged Fell took the senator's hand. I'm pleased to be working with you.
And delighted to meet you, Chief of State Dala sends her compliments and looks forward to meeting you when you make planetfall.
Jag nodded. And now, I believe protocol insists that we open a bottle or a dozen of wine and make some preliminary discussion of security, introduction protocols, and so on.
Fortunately about the wine, and regrettably about everything else, you are correct.
At the end of 2 full standard hours, Jaina knew from regular surreptitious consultations of her chrono, Jag was able to convince the senator and his retinue to accept a tour of the Galad Pelion. He was also able to request a private consultation with the sole representative of the Jedi Order present. Moments later, the gray-walled conference room was empty of everyone but Jag and Jaina. Jag glanced toward the door. "Security seal. Access limited to Jagged Fell and Jedi Jana Solo. Voice identification activate." The door hissed in response as it sealed. Then Jag returned his attention to Jaina. She let an expression of anger and accusation cross her face. "You're not fooling anyone, Fell. You're planning for an Imperial invasion of Alliance space." Jag nodded. "I've been planning it for quite a while. Come here." She moved to him, settled into his lap, and was suddenly, but not unexpectedly, caught in his embrace. They kissed urgently, hungrily. Finally, Jaina drew back and smiled at him. "This isn't going to be a routine part of your consultations with every Jedi." No. That would cause some trouble here and at home. But I actually do have business with the Jedi that does not involve the Galactic Alliance. At least not initially." "What sort of business?" "Whether or not the Galactic Empire joins with the Galactic Alliance, I think there ought to be an official Jedi presence in the Empire. A second temple, a branch, an offshoot, whatever, providing advice and insight to the head of state." "And protection?" He shrugged. "Less of an issue. I'm doing all right. 2 years in this position and not dead yet. Emperor Palpatine went nearly 25 years. I guess that makes him my hero." Jaina snorted. "Don't even say that in jest. Jag, if the Remnant doesn't join the Alliance, I'm not sure the Jedi can have a presence without Alliance approval. The Order still keeps its training facility for youngsters in Hapen space, and the Hapens haven't rejoined." "You sound annoyed. The Hapens still giving you trouble?" "Let's not talk about that. Besides, moving the school back to Alliance space is just a matter of time, logistics, and finances. There's no question that it will happen. On the other hand, it's very likely that the government would withhold approval for a Jedi branch in the Remnant just out of spite if the Remnant doesn't join." "Well, there's such a thing as an unofficial presence, and there's such a thing as rival schools, schismatic branches, and places for former Jedi to go when they can't be at the temple." Jaina smiled again, but now there was suspicion in her expression. "You just want to have this so I'll be assigned to come to the Remnant and set it up." "That's a motive, but not the only one. Remember, to the Moffs and to a lot of the Imperial population, the Jedi have been boogeymen since Palpatine died. At the very least, I don't want them to be inappropriately afraid of the woman I'm in love with." Jaina was silent for a moment. "Have we talked enough politics?"